Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new era of medical coding with Agentic AI. My name is Gabriel Skelton. I'm the head of sales here at OpenBots and really excited to be with you today, and especially pleased to see over 400 healthcare leaders register for this session. If you're here, it's because you know how critical medical coding is and the burden it has on physicians today. Today, we're going to show you a real working example of how Agentic AI can simplify, accelerate, improve the accuracy of medical coding and handling clinical documentation. I'm personally joined by an awesome team, a few subject matter experts here. Let's start with Zia Bhutta, our CEO and primary investor. Any words, Zia?
Good morning, good afternoon, Gabe. Thanks so much for the introduction. It's great to be here. This is a very exciting topic. I think the AI conversation and specifically agentic AI conversation around healthcare provider space and specifically around revenue cycle management is a big thing. So today we're going to be talking, specifically around medical coding, which again is a very exciting topic as well. So glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Happy to have you. Next, let's talk with Ashish Nangla, our Chief Technology Officer, the architect behind this contextual reasoning engine. Tell us a few words, Ashish.
Hi, I'm Ashish Nangla. I'm the CTO for OpenBots, and I'll be very excited to show you the new tool today, Claudio, the medical coding engine.
Absolutely, Ashish. Thank you. And next and last but not least, Ranodeb Banerjee. He goes by Rano, our Associate Director of Healthcare Automation.
Very nice to meet you, Gabe, Zia, and Ashish as well. My name is Rano. I'm the Associate Director of Healthcare Automation Solutions at OpenBots. Well, it's lovely to be a part of this panel as we look forward to showing our audience today the coding AI agent that we have designed that can handle autonomous and contextual coding. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this webinar.
Agreed. And let's get into it. I mean, frankly, this is all about physicians. There was a cheeky study that analyzed each physician, and it documented that physicians need 30 hours per day to get all their work streams done. Obviously, it actually counted tasks that they do and don't need to do. But the point is, think about what this really means. I mean, we call this in the healthcare industry pajama time when a physician is working after hours to do clinical documentation or to review clinical notes. And this is a mother who isn't spending time with her children after dinner. This is a father who maybe, it has a mental burden of the things they have to do throughout the day because they're obviously continuously playing catch up on what's going on. So if you're a healthcare leader and you're constantly hearing your physicians complaining about pajama time and things like that, you have a duty to change this because who does this negatively impact the most? Patients. You need your physicians to be at their best, not bogged down by clerical work and clinical work that they should be focusing on patients. So with that being said, let's jump in. So Zia, if you don't mind, can you break down the vision for what you expect agentic AI to do in the healthcare provider space?
Yeah, so specifically, let's talk about the revenue cycle management, which is the administration side of the healthcare provider space. So, as you guys know, that the provider, the healthcare RCM space is broken down into front end and the back end processes. So front ending processes include patient intake, eligibility, referrals, patient communications, prior authorization, and then the back end includes coding, claim submissions, denials, and payment postings and receivables. So there's a lot going on in the provider administration space. So many providers either do most of this process work in-house or they use outsourcing companies or offshore services providers to get this work done. Some of the providers also have some levels of ad hoc automation tools and automate some things in bits and pieces. And the reason for that is because most vendors provide toolkits for automations, but not a process outcome. So again, a toolkit is different than a product which actually executes a process end to end. So again, that approach requires long implementation cycles and yields a complex web of automations, which is what we see today in most of the providers. I mean, these automations are difficult to maintain and scale. So with agentic AI paradigm, the goal is to create a collaborative multi-agent suite which seamlessly automates the RCM processes front to back. So for example, an AI agent, again, this is a happy path example. An AI agent can handle a patient intake and referrals by taking patient registration info from faxes or other sources, create the patient charts in an EHR, run eligibility, run the prior authorization. It can also figure out if the prior authorization is required or not. It can then work all the way to the coding piece, the claim submissions, managing the denials lifecycle, and also settling the payments or the payment posting part. So throughout this process, the AI agents that we envision and have are capable of executing the processes autonomously. However, the agents will prompt the user as needed, which you will see today. For example, I mean, if in the coding process, what you'll see today that the agent will prompt the user if the patient notes are not of good quality and will ask for more information before deciding on the final ICD CPT codes. So in summary, the vision is that the integrated multi-agent suite of RCM agents will drive the process from front to back by keeping a human on the loop, as Ashish would say, and thereby streamlining the process and reduce the needs for tons of work that is required to get these things done today.
Couldn't agree more. It's a lot of areas, and really rev cycle as a whole needs to change. But Rano, I mean, if you don't mind, I mean, right now there are over 70,000 ICD-10 codes and growing. There's over 10,000 CPT codes. It's very difficult for a person, no matter how much of an expert they are, to keep up to date with everything that's going on, and not to even mention the ever-changing payer rules per payer, when providers can have hundreds of payers that they work with. So it's something that people genuinely need the help of technology. Physicians are actually leaving. Nurses are leaving right now because it's just too much of a burden. Again, it focuses and negatively impacts our patients. So tell us a little why you think medical coding needs reinvention and why it's such a pain point right now for healthcare providers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think medical coding is categorically a problem within the revenue cycle operations that is pinpointed by the healthcare groups, in a sense that this is one of the many areas across revenue cycle where we need AI. Now, let's start with the basics. Any healthcare encounter starts with care and code. In a way, codes are the language of revenue cycle management. So if you get the codes right, as a healthcare group, you can do prior authorization faster and you can manage the denials better. So coding is super, super important, if I can frame that. Now, let's think about the pain points for a healthcare group when it comes to medical coding. There are two aspects. One is the administrative side of things, the other is the financial side of things. Let's talk about the administrative side of things. One of the first things that we have seen is that there is no limit to the ICD-10 or CPT or HCPCS codes. These codes are constantly updating. And coupled with that is the new set of payer rules that every single payer has in its own design and formula. So every single payer will have its own set of rules. They will have their own set of medical necessary guidelines, which has to be adhered by the medical practice group to get the proper reimbursements and do the coding correctly. Now, if you talk to the seasoned medical coders, one of the things that you would often hear is that it almost takes them 15 to 30 minutes on average to do coding for one complex chart. Now, if a health system that is billing $300 million annually perhaps is kind of handling 300 to 400,000 patient encounters annually. So you can think about the capacity of work this medical coders has to do day in, day out. That's a huge problem. We are not talking about mere small volumes here. One of the points that you have already touched on is physician burnout, or a clinical burnout that happens these days. Well, recent studies says that typically a physician is now spending more time typing than treating patients, which is primarily one of the main reasons why a physician burnout is taking place. So if you think about the administrative issues, there are many, and I can even add a few more issues on top of this. But fundamentally, we have seen that the constantly changing payer rules, along with the constantly updating ICD-10 CPT codes, are kind of leading to a way where it's becoming really difficult for the medical practice groups to cope up with these changing practices. Now, think for the financial side of things. Like on a financial side of things, we know that coding is, if I may say, inaccurate coding is one of the leading reasons for a claim to be denied. According to a report by the American Medical Association in 2020, we have seen that medical coding done inappropriately accounts for 30% of the claims to be denied. So, in today's world where the healthcare facilities are working in tight margins, if you can recoup that 30% of the denials, that's an additional million, perhaps, for large groups that you can spend on patient care or across infrastructure, which is right now lost in the tables. So I think it's very important for medical practice groups in general to think about AI technology, generative AI, language models, or any other modern technology that can be applied to alleviate the coding problems that they are currently grappled with.
I love that, Ronald, especially the point around how codes are the language of the healthcare industry. And really, a note is a bill. And physicians are trained to be physicians to treat patients, not on the billing side. So it's not just about making sure you document the patient information correctly. It's also documenting it correctly in a way that is going to also be approved by insurance. So that's where technology can step in. And Ashish, now is your time to shine to kind of break down the demo of how this works, because I love your concept of human on the loop. Before it was human in the loop where a human was needed. Now it's human on the loop where once the technology comes in, it can do the rest of the process. But go ahead, Ashish, and kind of break down how providers can make more money by having this automated in terms of ICD and CPT codes automatically being attributed to each node.
Absolutely. So let's start with the platform. Look at what the screens look like and what the actual AI agent would do, right? So of course, out of all these agents, we're talking about the coding one, and that's the one that we'll talk about today only. And we can talk about the whole thing end to end later with all the other AI agents working together. Right now, we'll talk about the AI agent for medical coding. It's part of our platform. One of the things you would do is essentially come in on the screen, and you can copy the notes. But however, I would say you don't need to do any of the typing of the notes, because the system can actually read from the sorry, I'm just opening the notes, and so the system can read from EHR and EMR systems, right? It doesn't need to, you don't need to type in over here. So in this example, I'm using a disconnected mode. We're not connected to any of the EHR systems. However, we do have capability to connect with most of them. Pretty much all of them support FHIR APIs, and we definitely can integrate them with them seamlessly. So just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to just copy paste. But typically, what would happen is a patient encounter would happen, or an appointment would happen. Somebody would type in the notes, submit it, and this is where we would pick it up. We have the whole, the studio piece, which will basically run and pick up the notes that have been typed in whenever it's available. Some people have just after the encounter, just after somebody puts it into a medical coding queue. It could be any of that. So wherever you put in, we can pick it up from there, take the notes, give it to the system, and basically it would start running. Okay, this thing takes about a minute and a half. But what we can do is go through this something that I just submitted a few minutes ago. So these are the notes. This is what has been typed in into the system. What the system or the AI agent does at the very first is analyzes the notes, and what it does is we call it grading. So it's going to grade the notes from 1 to 5. Of course, this will change based on the practice, based on the rules that you have, based on all the other standard operating procedures you have. Now, this is going to give you exactly what is how it analyzes the notes, right? So they are largely complete, clear things. However, some areas remain ambiguous, right? And it'll basically say, okay, this is what is ambiguous and things. What grading also does is gives you feedback on the notes, and it's also a good way, I would say, is to give training or enforcing rules on your providers on what is needed on the rules, on the notes, sorry. Instead of doing this, a typical approach I've seen is people go through lots of notes, then create these training sessions where they go in and train their provider, saying, you this is what these are the common problems. However, this is a more effective way of doing it. You can actually see what the notes are. Now, next thing it also does is it'll query if the notes are not complete. Sorry. So if the notes are not complete, it's going to basically give you, queries as to what it needs specifically from the provider. This is also something that you're used to when a medical coder is actually emailing or contacting the provider asking for certain details. This will ensure there's no ambiguity. This sure there is completeness, and this will ask you questions about specifically if it has to go through a specific a provider or a peer. It can also make sure that that information is enclosed and is a part of the whole notes, or if it's not, it'll ask you questions about it. So here are the questions it's expecting. Now, in this case, we are running it in disconnected mode from the EHR, so it's asking you the questions. But if this was connected to an EHR, it will attempt to answer these questions by itself as well. It'll look at all the patient demographic information, appointment information, any documents that have been attached, any lab reports that have been there. So it'll take all those things and attempt to answer these questions as well. And at the end, it'll only have the questions that basically have not been answered so far by anybody. So if it cannot figure that out from the whole system, from the whole documents and all the attachments and all the appointment information, only then it'll come back and ask the provider.
And
So there
Ashish,
were,
question there. So these
yeah.
questions come up, and then do they eventually go away, or do they always come up every time?
So they would go away if the information is available, right? And if the information is either put into the notes, or this information is answered here, or if the information, it can find the information in the EHR system, then it goes into the answered query section. So if I put in an answer, I say, okay, then it goes into the answered queries, and you can see what it has been able to answer. So you can either see what somebody else has answered, or what the system has answered by itself, and then be able to take it forward. So only when it finds, hey, there are these unanswered queries and these are critical, it'll wait for you to answer them. Okay. After the queries part, what it'll do is, even though there are queries, it'll still attempt to answer these or code these notes. It'll basically say, now, of course, if there are queries, the codes are not accurate enough, because it wants to know. So, like for this example, say clarification is requested via query one as this, whether this should be coded separately, right? So it basically needs to know some of these things on that. So if you will definitely get your ICD codes, your diagnosis codes, and then you will get the procedure codes as well, whatever it can find based on that. The good thing is it'll also tell you why it chose some of these things, right? And here, so this was basically there. This was a telehealth service, so it'll exactly tell you what happened. It'll also give you what is the confidence around it, so it knows. You can see if the confidence is low, it'll still try to find. But as you answer these queries, as the notes get richer, basically the confidence number rises up as well. Okay.
And Ashish, this is fascinating. Is it basing this off of the code that's most likely to be approved, or the one that's going to yield the highest revenue? Is it a mix of both? Like, how does that work?
So first it does is pure coding. It basically look at the nodes, get the values out, right? Second thing it'll basically do is look at your node. So I have other as well. So it'll basically look at the second part is to actually look at your SOPs. So if you have an SOP to your organization saying this is how your practice works, these are your typical codes to go to, and these are your conditions. If say for example, typical examples we get is when appointment time is not how much time was spent is not included, take it from the HR. If it's not available, if you are running in a disconnected mode, then assume that it's 30 minutes, right? So some of those SOPs can kick in and can adjust. The third level to that is then going to the payer rules and be able to answer that as well. So if you create payer specific, if we had insurance information, then it can basically look at the payer rules, and you can create a payer SOP as well, as to how you want the codes to be and what kind of modifiers you want to apply. And these are just English documents. These are not some kind of a rule engine or some kind of a very complicated configuration. You just put it in Microsoft Word and we upload it into the system. The some of the other things the system will do is also do people who bought this also bought this kind of a thing in this example, right?
Almost like Amazon, almost.
Yes. So it's like a shopping cart. We actually use the same algorithm, so it's not very different. So when things club together, you say, okay, these procedures typically do not go together. I have not seen them go together. So after some time of running, this engine is also training itself. It knows these codes and these diagnosis codes or CPD codes probably don't go together, or they do go. There is one missing. So it'll basically say, are you missing that? So it would have showed up over here and said, are you missing this, right? So it would be either you have missed it in the, if you have missed it in the notes, or you have basically missed out a revenue opportunity. So it can identify either as well,
A
and you can
comment.
then find.
You
So
mentioned payer rules, Ashish. Sorry. One of
yeah,
the pieces of feedback our clients have given us is that different payers will deny different things for different reasons. And
yeah.
sometimes they're doing it manually. They feel like, oh, we can't even figure out why it's being denied. We can't pinpoint. Like, tell us a little more about the payroll side and how this can
So
actually
the
do that.
queries. I'm so sorry about this. Give me 1 second. I'll shut it down. Okay. So what it'll basically do is it'll ask you the queries based on that as well. So one of the easiest way of doing this is getting the queries based on the pair rules or pair SOPs and answer those as well. We cannot go and change the nodes, but we can definitely, what we can do is ask for additional information that would help you to reduce your denials. So once, if we think that if you would have included that information, that part of the information in the notes itself or in the details itself, it would help you to have better pass through rates or lesser denial rates. Then it'll ask you that question. So uh, once the engine is trained on the data and it knows where you are getting your denials from, where you get for that particular pair, it creates what we call as a memory, pair memory. And from that memory, it'll basically start giving you those kind of recommendations as well. So the queries in module itself that you see is going to include pair specific queries. Did I answer your question? Okay. Now, I will continue. So essentially, when you have all the codes and all the diagnosis from here, the engine can pick it up, put it in any of your EHR system, medical billing system, or any of your claim system that is required to do that from here onwards. So the steps before that is to gather all the information from your EHR system and or your appointment system, ZocDoc, anything, anywhere that we need to get that information from. Give it to this engine. All this is automated. Nobody's actually coming to these screens. That's why these screens that look the way they are, because these are not screens for humans. These are screens that the AI uses by itself, or the module that AI uses itself. Gets the information out, creates the query, Queries can be emailed, queries can be created as tasks, queries can be given as a link or a form. And then once the whole process is finished, it's going to take the codes that have been generated, and then it can pre-arrange everything for a biller or a coder or whoever you need the next steps to take care of. Does that
And
answer the question?
yeah, I mean, so, and Ashish, obviously the way you code significantly differs from specialty. So
Yeah.
from gastroenterology versus oncology versus cardiology, all three are going to have different requirements, right? Like how does this understand each specialty, and does it?
So yes, so we trained it on pretty much everything. We've trained it on, say, 35,000 clinical notes that spans across all the specialties. It has pretty much worked for everything out of the box. However, there are provider specific and specialty specific SOP that we are talking about. If you create the SOP document, that's most of the times I've seen it's not more than 2 pages. Maximum is 2 pages, and these are the same SOPs that you generally give to your medical coders. When you give that, the codes are then refined, and you only get exactly what your specialty is and what exactly what you're looking for. It narrows it down. The core engine is not specific to a specific practice or a specialty. It can work for pretty much anything.
No, excellent. And I mean, tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, about, and these are the questions that we're constantly getting, is
Sure.
historical data. Like, how does it access historical data? Like, how do you integrate with EHRs? Like, tell us a little bit more about that.
So EHR systems, we basically integrate using FHIR APIs. That's an entire different module. We can look into that as well. And everything, all our AI agents use that. So getting information, creating, like for example, our patient intake and referral AI agent, it reads a document that you have received from the fax. It can get all the information out, and then it can use the APIs and our connectivity into EHR systems to look if the patient already exists. If not, create a new record, get the MRI number, and then put it in the referral, saying yes, file it within your document management system or whatever is needed. We have also customers who make us or who want us to send text messages to patients saying, if the cell phone number is available on the referral, to text them saying, hey, you can have, here is a link to get your appointment for your referral. So that those processes are also included. That's part of the EHR integration. Other than that, historic data, you can run this any number of times. This is an AI agent. This can run on live data, online data, as in the minute it's been put in the queue, or it can run on thousands of records that you might have done previously, and it can get queries, and it can get the gradings, and we can easily give you a report saying this is the overall quality of your clinical notes, and then we can compare it with your denials and come back and say, hey, if you start doing these 5 things or these 10 things in your notes, it may increase your probability of getting the claims through by 5% or 10% or 20%. So those are the things that we could also work. Those are secondary use cases, I would say, for this AI agent. But primarily, I would say this is part of the entire flow.
Yeah. And I mean, this is another key question, and I love this question. This is very important to break down, is like standardization versus style. So for example, let's say a provider has 50 physicians or 150 or 1,000. Is it actually coding in a way that is based on the style of a specific physician, or is it standardizing it across physicians based on the procedure or the type of code needed? Like, tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, we like to standardize things more because it's the objective of this thing is to make sure that your prior auth and claims that are dependent on this go through seamlessly, right? That's the objective. The objective is not to meet the style. It's not to please anybody. Essentially, it's to make sure that you are able to get that claim or in a first pass fashion without having any denial. So that's the objective behind it. The objective behind is to look for revenue opportunities. The objective behind it is to have accuracy in the codes, as well as accuracy in the notes itself, or elaborate. So that's the overall objective that the agent has been trained on. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? I think that was part of that. We can get into Q&A now if there's any Q&A from people who have joined in.
Sure. So let's do this. I had a couple, one more question for Zia, one more for Rano, and then we'll get directly into Q&A if that's all right. But this is extremely helpful, Ashish, to break it down. In summary, basically, the physician can initially write their clinical note. This will basically grade it for accuracy and for completion, and then automatically fix it itself or give suggestions too. In the beginning, it can ask some questions to answer, and then over time, it will basically not need to do that because it can automatically understand your historical data, payer guidelines, and the way the physicians at that provider typically code those specific procedures and in diagnoses. But the question I have for you, Zia, is tell us a little more about ROI. Like why does this matter so much? How do you envision the future of medical coding in terms of ROI and the impact on the provider from the financial perspective? And you're muted, Zia.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So before I talk the ROI, let me just talk a little bit about the question that we have heard a lot about. What's going to happen to the medical coders? Are the medical coders, going to extinct? We don't think so. We think that their jobs will evolve. We think while AI tools can automate routine tasks, like suggesting codes for medical records, just like what you saw, and identifying even billing errors, the human coders are still critical for complex case audits and compliance. At the end of the day, we're talking about a human patient here, right? So the coders provide a human judgment, they provide expertise, they provide understanding of the context that AI systems may currently lack. So having said that, let's just take a high level look at what AI can do today. As you kind of saw, so the AI can understand the charts by reading the physician notes and labs and imaging and the entire thing. The AI can consume it, understand it. It can assign the codes with explanation. It can even, you saw that it can actually grade the actual notes as well, so that the notes, that's a kind of like a feedback towards the physician or the practitioner, so that that cycle makes the note-taking process better. AI can detect risks and compliance issues with upcoding and downcoding. It can, so there's a lot that AI can do. So we think that the ROI is clear. You have more throughput, you have reduced costs, whether it be FTE cost or whether it be just a time to market cost. You have increased accuracy, your faster revenue cycle management, and you have most of all, you have consistency in your process. So if you look at it overall, we think the reimbursement environment is getting difficult by the day, and the payers are facing challenges of increased healthcare demands, so they will throttle more and more. So we think that the providers need to get ahead, and AI is here is just not another tool anymore, but we think it's a strategic imperative. Just think of an environment where you have an RCN team equipped with a technology like this versus whatever they're using today, and you will get a pretty clear idea of where things are going.
Agreed. In terms of ROI, think about it, like physicians. There's another study that said that at a minimum, physicians are spending at least 8 hours extra apart from their normal workload just to do this. It's an extra full day. That's 6 days a week on top of what they're already doing. Obviously, physicians are the closest to the patient, some of the highest compensated folks. So the ROI is very clear. If you're helping your doctors, you're helping your patients, it's not just about the money, the time saved, and helping patients actually get approved sooner. It's also about making sure that the care that these patients are getting is happening, right? We've all had stories of delays and things like that from people that need care. This is a huge piece in terms of helping ROI and patient care. With that being said, we did receive a question just now. So let me show it on the screen. The question is, and Ashish, this is likely for you. How are AI agents learning in these scenarios and taking their own decisions?
So in this case, there are two opportunities of learning when the data comes through. Most of the learning for the coding is already done. We have a model that has been created that does all the coding part. The what learning opportunities it has is from the codes, right? The codes, the Amazon algorithm that we were talking about, the shopping cart algorithm we were talking about, that these codes typically go together. That's what it's learning. A and second part it's learning on is from the denials memory. Denial is creating a memory saying, hey, these are the reasons why some of the denials are coming in, and then using that to create queries on this side, on the coding side, is exactly where all the learning and integration comes in. In terms of the decisions, this is an outcome, or the output is basically codes. To use it or not, you have two ways to do it. Basically, in an automated way, the system can actually go in and put the things, or you can have a manual sign off when somebody comes in, looks at it, and says sign off. So that is absolutely added as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ronald, this is actually well aligned with the final question that I have for you in terms of denials. We had a client that was experiencing 70% initial denials before automation. And in the industry, we typically see is like a quarter of denials are right in registration eligibility. Initial 13% at a minimum are attributed to prior auth. The majority of these denials are just hand keyed errors or specific manual errors associated with the process. That's the majority of it. It's not as not well known as we would think. It's really errors. So question to you, Rano, tell us a little more about how this impacts revenue uplift, how this impacts denials. Like, what does it mean for that side as well, Rano?
Yeah, I think on the denial piece, reports suggest that nearly 30% of the denials happen because of inaccurate coding. So that's a straight link which we can equate to if you do the coding correctly, let alone the faster turnaround time and the reimbursement rates getting higher. Now, we have seen that on an average, there could be a 3 to 5% revenue uplift for organizations with better coding accuracy. If you think about the subspecialty cares and specialty cares like oncology and cardiology, they can even have up to 7% revenue uplift. Now, think about this, Gabe. If you are talking to a health system who is billing $500 million annually, even a 3% uplift translates to $15 million. That can be easily, put into patient care and infrastructure and many other areas, which is currently the money that is left on the table. Well, I do see a good thing with, the advent of AI and AI becoming more and more advanced. I'll tell you about the good thing, but historically speaking, revenue cycle management has been a people-driven environment, to say the least. People have tried to look for outsourcing companies to do the coding or use their in-house expertise, but there have been quite a few challenges recently. It's not that coding in itself is difficult, but a seasoned coder is quite difficult to hire in this current environment where labor issues have always been a challenge. The good thing that we do see right now is that as we speak with healthcare leaders and revenue cycle leaders in particular, they are embracing AI as a strong option that can be applied towards improving cash collection. So you don't have to throw more bodies to improve cash collection. What you need is capacity, and that capacity can come from AI agents that can handle the non-clinical things like a prior authorization or a medical coding. So the revenue lift for practice groups who wants to use AI is certainly there. And the good thing is we have been seeing the shift in mindset where we get to see that AI is playing a pivotal role in ensuring that coding is handled in a proper way, keeping that space open for medical coders to work on those complex use cases and let AI handle those 70 to 80% of the straightforward coding use cases.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we're gonna have one more Q&A question, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll show it on the screen. Ashish, I think it's same thing for you again. So, how do you measure the accuracy on the codes that are suggested by the AI agent? Is someone doing it is someone validating on the fly? Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, you could do sampling. Essentially, the typical way we do that is go through sampling, and we would say if you're doing 100 a day, we would keep 10 aside to basically do a manual review and then be able to come up with the accuracy on that. We don't recommend going through everything. If you're going through everything, that essentially means you're then going through the whole process, and the value add is not there. So typically, we would come up with a sampling method of doing that.
Excellent, excellent. A lot of information in this webinar. Thank you so much for the folks who were very active and who joined. Very exciting tool that's going to make a huge impact. If anyone has additional questions, we'll put in our information in the comments so you can reach out to us. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.